This is D's, the most powerful demon king in history. He followed every tradition, obeyed every rule, and memorized every law like fate itself. But in the end, it was not the hero's strength that killed him. It was the very rules and traditions he trusted. He was mocked as he died without dignity. But the fate have other plans. He was surprised to see that he got sent back into the time where he can actually make the change and take revenge on the heroes that once mocked him. The demon king stood frozen as reality crushed down upon him. The black flames he once revered as the absolute authority of his kingdom failed to even scorch the heroes standing before him. His scales, hardened through years of relentless cultivation, were pierced effortlessly by the hero's blade, which now lay buried deep within his heart. Nothing made sense anymore. He had done everything correctly. He graduated at the top of the Demon King Academy. He memorized the Demon King's standard word for word, followed every rule without deviation, and executed every doctrine to perfection. He built the tower exactly as instructed. He kidnapped royalty because tradition demanded it. He played the role of the mastermind flawlessly, scattering clues and deliberately nurturing heroes instead of killing them prematurely. The standard taught that heroes were livestock. The stronger they became, the richer the harvest would be. And yet, despite following that sacred logic to the letter, he lay bleeding in the dirt. The hero explained it plainly. Kidnapping royalty was never a crime. It was a signal. Towers were not fortresses, but invitations. Weak monsters were tools meant to train heroes. Delayed executions allowed them to grow. Even sparing their lives had only strengthened them further. His tower had never been a symbol of domination. It was a training ground, a farming zone. The heroes laughed openly, expressing their gratitude for raising their levels and providing excellent loot. Even the fallen heroes were dismissed as insignificant sacrifices made in pursuit of fame. The mockery cut deeper than death itself. Consumed by rage, the Demon King attempted to unleash his final power. Before it could even take shape, his head was severed cleanly from his body. As his consciousness faded, he sacrificed everything he had left to trigger one final explosion, swallowing the battlefield whole. Then came darkness. A voice called his name. Dees opened his eyes to thunderous applause. He found himself standing once again in the Demon King Academy. 15 years in the past, his graduation badge resting in his hand. Before him, the glowing laws of the Demon King standard materialized as they once had. This time, he understood everything. When asked to swear the oath, Das refused. He openly denounced the standard, declaring it trash, a cruel joke designed to enslave demon kings and fatten heroes for slaughter. His words stunned the entire academy. In that instant, the greatest genius of the era became something far more dangerous. The madman of the century, Archduke Arcane Blair, was the first to completely lose his composure. He slammed his hand down with such force. It seemed as though he intended to split the table in half, roaring about immediate execution for what he deemed an unforgivable affront to their sacred standards. The sheer rage in his voice reverberated through the hall, making everyone feel as though the academy itself was caught in a violent earthquake. Then he paused. The Archduke reconsidered. That child had always been a shining star, possessing absurd discipline, overwhelming talent, and an academic record bordering on perfection. Executing him on the spot would be an irreversible waste. With a flicker of reluctant mercy, the Archduke issued a final ultimatum. Deus was to either retract his words and apologize to the entire demon realm or be exiled to the hellhole known as the Aryan region. The moment Aryan was mentioned, the hall erupted into hushed gasps and frantic whispers. Aryan was infamous, a graveyard for demon kings, a dimension where dozens perished every year without leaving a trace. No one could understand why someone who had committed such blasphemy was even being offered a second chance. In their eyes, no apology could ever atone for that level of sacrilege. The Archduke reminded them that Aryan was the most hostile place in existence, a void that had devoured countless demon kings without even leaving behind an echo. Before the murmurs could settle, Das responded with icy resolve. He demanded the assignment immediately, accepting it as though it were a reward rather than a punishment. The Archduke was left speechless. His composure crumbled entirely. The realization that Deus intended to use Aryan to expose the standards as a farce shattered what little patience he had left. Orders thundered through the hall. Deus was to be transferred to Aryan at once. Every privilege granted to top-tier demon kings was stripped away. No minions, no preparation time, nothing. The portal flared open. The command was final. Dees was banned from returning until he conquered that hellhole. As Dees tumbled through the portal, he understood that this outcome was inevitable. Reality struck hard as he fell. Aryan was the very place where the heroes who killed him in his previous life had risen to prominence. Back then, he had chosen Aryan out of arrogance, believing the strongest should face the toughest challenges. That pride had led him straight into a trap. Those heroes had exploited his blind obedience to the standards and annihilated him. But this time was different. As he spread his wings and landed safely within the icy grip of the Urgus Mountains on the northern continent, he welcomed the biting cold. This life would not repeat the last. He resolved to twist the standards to his advantage instead of letting them devour him again. Meanwhile, back at the academy, chaos brewed on the morning of the graduation ceremony. Gordon Derrick prepared with meticulous care, polishing every detail with a precision that would impress a drill sergeant. In the demon world, the highest-ranking demon was assigned to serve the top demon king, a position that sparked envy hotter than dragonfire among the graduates ranked just below. Gordon viewed all demon kings as extraordinary, but Diaz stood above them all. A once-in-a-millennium existence, a descendant of demonic dragons, a figure destined to carve his name into history. Graduating alongside him felt like a divine blessing. Gordon imagined conquering dimensions together, statues immortalizing them as king and loyal assistant. Then came the moment when Das publicly rejected the sacred standards. That memory struck Gordon like a freight train. The image he had idolized shattered instantly. He could barely comprehend that the figure he revered had cast aside the sacred teachings, as if they were worthless trash. Now deep within the frozen expanse of the Urgus Mountains, Gordon trudged through relentless snow, weighed down by packs that felt impossibly heavy. Confusion and despair twisted his face into an expression of disbelief. He could not understand how everything had spiraled out of control so quickly. When Dees finally noticed him, his expression shifted to genuine astonishment. He had been told no demon would follow him. Yet there Gordon stood. Gordon's composure finally collapsed. He unleashed a torrent of questions, demanding to know why Dees had caused such catastrophic upheaval, why he dared to insult the sacred standards, and why they were both stranded in the most dangerous region on the continent. Dees responded with infuriating calm, brushing off the questions as though unaware of the chaos surrounding them. That indifference only fueled Gordon's frustration. He reminded Dees of the single moment that condemned them both to this frozen purgatory. Dees attempted to lighten the mood with humor, but Gordon had no tolerance for jokes while panic gnawed at his core. As Dees watched Gordon unravel, memories of the man he once knew resurfaced, the confident warrior who once charged eagerly toward Aryan. Now fear had seized control. Revealing the truth about time reversal would only worsen the situation. So Dees chose silence. Eventually Gordon managed to steady himself. He apologized stiffly, reaffirming his duty despite the doubts still lingering in his mind. Relying on the teachings he still believed in, he insisted that the first rule remained unchanged. They needed to build a tower, but not just any tower. The tower, according to Gordon, needed to be placed in a visible and accessible location, not hidden within a frozen wasteland crawling with monsters. The surrounding mountains were infested with ferocious beasts, making traversal nearly impossible for ordinary beings. He argued that choosing such a location blatantly violated every principle outlined in the Demon King standards and insisted they needed to retreat immediately. Desire rejected the idea outright. Stubborn as an immovable pillar, he declared that the tower would rise exactly where they stood here and now and nowhere else. Without further debate, he produced the legendary tower seed and thrust it into the frozen earth. The seed required Demon King blood to awaken, and Gordon's panic surged instantly. He accused Dees of trampling over sacred traditions, but Dees responded with cold finality. He had never sworn allegiance to those standards in the first place. Gordon recoiled as though struck across the face. That rejection of doctrine hit him with crushing force. For demons, the standards were as fundamental as breathing itself. To deny them felt as unnatural as flying without wings, unless one had endured something truly hellish, like death itself. Day sliced his palm open without hesitation and let his blood drip onto the seed. He asserted that Gordon needed to understand something clearly, that the standards were utterly worthless, especially within Aryan. The seed absorbed the blood and erupted in a blinding red flare. As a massive magic circle expanded outward, the tower began identifying its master. These are the Black Flame demonic dragon clan. As the revelation unfolded, it shattered the foundations of everything Gordon believed. These explained that Aryans swarmed with heroes because they had learned how to manipulate towers, weaponizing the Demon King standards against demons themselves. That was the reason Demon Kings met their end in this cursed land time and time again. When the tower fully manifested, Rising from the snow like a dark and brooding monument, Gordon stared in disbelief. Dees merely remarked that the standards deserved to be renamed, given that they now serve humans far better than demons ever had. The interior of the tower was nothing but desolation. Upon entering the first floor, cold stone and suffocating silence greeted them. Gordon inspected the empty space with growing unease. A proper tower should have been overflowing with chambers, traps, and monsters. Yet, this one felt abandoned, stripped of every luxury a demon king was supposed to possess. Each level above proved just as barren. By the time they reached the 5th floor, the so-called king's chamber was as empty as the rest. Gordon reluctantly accepted that the tower structure was beyond saving, but insisted that the next rule of the standards still needed to be followed. The second requirement demanded the kidnapping of a prince or princess, preferably someone close to the throne, to siphon the strongest emotional energy. Gordon asked for permission to offer his suggestion, and Dees granted it with a nod. Unfurling a map, Gordon pointed toward the kingdom of Corson, the closest realm to the Urgus Mountains. In his assessment, abducting the highest-ranking princess there would send waves of fear and despair through the kingdom, fueling their growth immensely. Dees cut him off before he could continue. He agreed with the kidnapping itself, but revealed that he had already chosen his target. Gordon's excitement spiked at the prospect of accompanying the mission until Dees ordered him to remain behind and guard the tower. Gordon took this as reassurance, convincing himself that his king had finally returned to reason and that the earlier erratic behavior was merely the stress of graduation. That fragile optimism shattered instantly when he learned the chosen target. Instead of Corson's royal princess, Dees had selected Hilderin, the kingdom farthest from the tower, and rather than a high-ranking royal, his target was the 13th princess, a girl with almost no influence and barely any presence at court. With unwavering resolve, Dees launched himself southward, crossing vast lands until he reached a distant castle. He slipped through a window and entered the princess's private chamber without hesitation. The mission felt disturbingly familiar. Yet this time, he moved with a purpose that defied every sacred rule of the demon world. Back at the tower, Gordon's heart pounded as panic set in. His king had chosen the least strategic option possible, the complete opposite of everything the standards demanded. Inside the chamber, the princess stared at Dees in stunned confusion, unsure of who or what had just shattered her quiet night. Dees wasted no time, declaring his identity and intent with unwavering confidence. Instead of terror, she responded with a soft, almost amused laugh. The reaction caught Dees completely off guard. Rather than shrinking back, the princess stood tall, meeting his gaze as though appraising him. Her audacity was baffling. He questioned whether she genuinely understood the danger or simply thought demon kings were some kind of joke. Even so, he bolstered his confidence, certain of his own presence. What he failed to anticipate was her calm acceptance, as though being kidnapped was little more than an inconvenience. That composure sent an inexplicable chill down his spine. He questioned her motives sharply, but she merely shrugged, explaining that she had long suspected something absurd like this might happen to a princess. He warned her not to attempt anything clever, insisting he would not tolerate deception, especially while feeling as though he stood on a fragile bridge above molten lava. She countered calmly, pointing out that she could not have plotted anything when she had no way of knowing he would appear that night. Her reasoning was sound, yet something about it unsettled him. Before he could dwell on it further, she extended her hand and beckoned him to leave. Dees took her hand, and together they soared back toward the tower hidden deep within the Urus Mountains. The moment they landed, Gordon rushed forward, tension radiating from every movement. Dees instructed him to place the princess on the 4th floor rather than throwing her into the dungeon, explaining that her lack of resistance warranted a small measure of leniency. Gordon complied, then requested to discuss an urgent matter. Meanwhile, the princess sat alone on the barest one floor of the 4th level, quietly remarking to herself that she had truly been kidnapped. Her eyes wandered across the empty chamber. No bedding, no servants, no comforts of any kind. Yet, despite everything, a small smile formed on her lips as she concluded that perhaps this situation was not entirely unbearable. At the same time, Gordon presented Dees with an ornate invitation from the Tower of Monsters. It announced a welcome celebration for the newly crowned Demon King. Dees dismissed it as a hollow display of intimidation, a posturing show of power. Under normal circumstances, Demon Kings would never cooperate. But Aaron's grim reality had forced uneasy alliances. Still, he decided to attend. The stakes had grown too significant to ignore. The Tower of Monsters loomed from within a dense forest. There, Dees came face-to-face with Draxon, the demon king who had ruled the region for 70 long years. Draxon's first reaction was steeped in contempt. He assessed these as though he were nothing more than dust beneath his feet, making his disdain for the newcomer's disregard for tradition unmistakably clear. Dees responded with unbothered defiance, urging him to abandon theatrics and state his purpose. The reason soon surfaced. Draxon revealed that Archduke Arcane had ordered him to monitor Dees closely. Dees retaliated with an unfiltered insult, mocking how even exiled to Eren had failed to extinguish the Archduke's arrogance. The remark ignited Draxon's fury. He attempted to assert dominance by issuing a humiliating command, but Dees did not yield. Instead, he questioned whether Draxon truly understood why he was there. Draxon insisted that Dadius had violated sacred traditions. Dadius cut him off, pointing out that those same traditions forbade demon kings from killing one another before slamming his heel down and shattering the floor with a single thunderous strike. The sheer force of the display left Draxon frozen in stunned silence. Only then did Draxon realize far too late that he had gravely misjudged his guest. Scrambling to salvage what had already become a complete disaster, he dragged up the Archduke's orders once more. Orders tangled in the chaotic affair of a kidnapped princess and a report that wasn't even due for another month. Dadius responded casually, mentioning that he had already taken a princess for himself, and with a wicked grin added that she was exactly his type. Draxon was left utterly baffled as Dadius strutted out of the tower as if he owned the damn place. Back in his own tower, Gordon was practically bouncing off the walls, showering Dadius with praise for his overwhelming, unfiltered display of power. Dadius waved it off like it was nothing, firmly convinced that Draxon wouldn't dare escalate things now. Still, he warned Gordon to stay alert. He instructed him to check on the princess and see how she might be turned into a valuable asset. Despite his outward confidence, unease churned deep inside him. He couldn't stop worrying about the other demon kings. If they decided to unite, they could become an overwhelming threat. Mocking tradition carried consequences far heavier than he had anticipated. Even so, he knew he would make the same choice 1,000 times over. Facing death was preferable to bowing before those he despised. He had plans to rebuild everything from the ground up. In his mind, expending a measly amount of energy to kidnap a low-ranking princess had been an absolute steal. That confidence shattered the moment he opened his system panel and saw the number staring back at him over 13,000 points. The shock hit him instantly. Before he could process it, a video message arrived from the Tower of Monsters. Draxon appeared on the screen, suddenly cheerful and overly cordial, congratulating him and offering a gift. He claimed admiration for Dadius's accomplishments and hinted that mocking tradition might have served some hidden purpose. The abrupt shift in tone was deeply unsettling. Before Dadius could unravel the meaning behind that twisted message, Gordon burst into the room, pale as a ghost and shaking uncontrollably. He reported that something was seriously wrong on the 4th floor. Dadius rushed over and stopped dead in his tracks. The spare room had transformed into a lush living garden. Flowers bloomed in vibrant colors. Butterflies drifted lazily through the air, and an entire ecosystem flourished inside the tower. Elemental spirits swirled around the princess who stood at the center like a sovereign of nature itself. Only a master of all 4 elements could create something so extraordinary, and there was only one spirit elementalist of that caliber on the entire continent. In that instant, Dios realized the truth. She was not the 13th princess. She confirmed his suspicion with a sly smile, revealing that her true name was Ernon, the first princess of the kingdom, a kingdom now poised to erupt in fury. Within hours, news of her kidnapping spread through the royal palace like wildfire. The king erupted in rage, swearing vengeance against the demon king who had dared touch his precious daughter. He rallied the mightiest heroes and ordered the full mobilization of the army to ensure her triumphant return. The situation had spiraled into absolute chaos. The princess appeared once more, her presence shimmering with regal authority, reminding Dios of the question she had posed earlier, whether he could truly handle her. She made it unmistakably clear that this was the core issue. Ever the keen observer, Dadius made it known that her enchanting appearance fooled him not in the slightest. He had heard tales of a genius elemental whose mana overflowed like a raging volcano. Power of that magnitude was impossible to ignore. What truly intrigued him was how she had managed to suppress such an overwhelming presence so completely. With dramatic flair, Ernon revealed a magnificent ring on her finger, explaining that it was a royal heirloom capable of concealing her magical energy. She then fixed Dadius with a piercing gaze, questioning whether he intended to send her back now that he knew the truth. Didius scoffed at the idea. Returning a princess would turn him into the kingdom's greatest joke, shatter his fearsome reputation, and destroy his ability to harvest demonic energy from the terror he inspired. Letting her go was never an option. At that precise moment, the system detected an explosive surge of fury directed squarely at him. His demonic energy skyrocketed to 19,000 points. The realization hit him immediately. The kingdom had discovered her disappearance and identified him as the culprit. Whether she was the first princess or the 13th made no difference. To them, she was his hostage. Back at the royal palace, the king roared orders to annihilate the demon king and rescue his daughter. His advisors, however, remained confused, still uncertain of the true perpetrator. Reconnaissance units pleaded for patience, but his fury erupted uncontrollably. He bared them for their incompetence while his daughter remained trapped in an unknown hell. A seasoned advisor recalled a recent scandal in a neighboring realm where a prince had been kidnapped by the Demon King of Lust, an incident that united the world and ended with the Demon King's public execution at the hands of heroes. The idea that another Demon King would repeat such a mistake sent chills through the chamber. The king concluded with grim certainty that a new Demon King had emerged. At that moment, a soldier burst into the hall, reporting the detection of teleportation magic moving north toward the Urgus Mountains. Shock rippled through the room. Those mountains lay far to the north while the kingdom rested in the far south. The implications were deeply troubling. Within the tower, Gordon voiced concern over the impending arrival of the kingdom's forces. Didius, however, remained calm and confident. He knew their army would never reach him. The journey crossed multiple hostile nations, natural barriers, and political minefields. None of those kingdoms would welcome Hildren soldiers. That left only one option: hiring a heroes' guild. The king reluctantly issued the order, but fear swept through the guild headquarters the moment the Urgus Mountains were mentioned. The heroes refused outright, treating the request like being asked to fix live electrical wiring. To them, it was suicide. Just as Geos had predicted, mercenaries driven by profit and self-preservation would never march towards certain death. That was precisely why he had chosen that location. Gordon found himself increasingly impressed by Didius's strategic brilliance and uncanny understanding of the world of Eren. It felt as though his master had lived there before, despite that being impossible. Back at the palace, the king erupted once more upon learning that no heroes had accepted the mission. An advisor explained that heroes in Eren treated battles like job listings. If the risk was too high or the pay too low, they simply ignored it. Inside the tower, Dios browsed the system store. Skeletal soldiers cost 10,000 points each, and weakening dimensional interference required even more. Building a proper army would demand time he didn't have. Sitting heavily on his throne, he admitted that his current demonic energy was insufficient to face a united hero force. Memories of his past lives, fear, crept back in. To overcome this, he ordered Gordon to contact Draxon. He intended to sell demonic energy in exchange for human currency. Gordon reacted in horror, knowing demonic energy was essential for breaking racial limits and unlocking powerful features. But Didius was confident Draxon would pay dearly. Disguised as a mercenary, Dios arrived alone at the fortress city of Holton. The guards mocked the idea of a lone mercenary heading toward the Urgus Mountains until he tossed them a gold coin. Their attitude shifted instantly, and they allowed him entry. Inside, he realized he needed a guide. That led him to the Scarlet Hawk Mercenary Guild, where members lounged and drank. They discussed rumors of a new Demon King, dismissing them as nonsense, meant to extort gold from the kingdom. When Geos appeared behind their leader, panic erupted. They demanded to know who he was. Didius merely smiled, noting how well-informed they were and deciding they would serve as suitable guides. When they attacked instead, a brutal fight broke out. Das moved with ruthless precision. One mercenary attempted a sneak attack from behind, only for Das to block it as effortlessly as swatting away a mosquito. When another swung a massive hammer toward him, Das caught it midair, stunning the attacker in the same way martial arts movie characters freeze when their strongest punch is stopped barehanded. Within moments, crossbows were aimed at him from every direction. Even then, he continued fighting without hesitation. He seized one large mercenary and hurled him into the others, scattering them like bowling pins crashing across the floor. The leader watched in absolute terror, no longer seeing a man, but a monster torn straight from a dark fantasy series. Outside the building, several mercenaries muttered in despair, questioning why the battle still hadn't ended and why exhaustion never seemed to touch their opponent. It felt as though they were trapped in a boss fight against an enemy who simply refused to obey stamina rules. When the rest finally collapsed, Das approached the trembling leader, his eyes faintly glowing in the shadows. He assured the man that he would survive on the condition that he answered truthfully. Faced with a presence that felt like a final boss looming over him, the leader agreed instantly. Begging for mercy without hesitation, Das demanded the location of the slave market. Shaking uncontrollably, the leader guided him to a massive structure sealed behind a heavy iron gate. Das quickly noticed that the market dealt exclusively in human slaves. The leader hesitated, uncertain whether this displeased him. Das asked if there was anything rarer and casually tossed him a heavy bag of gold. Fear vanished in an instant, replaced entirely by greed. The leader's demeanor shifted immediately like a shopkeeper adjusting his attitude for a wealthy customer, and he led Das toward a hidden section of the market. As they walked, Das couldn't help but notice how quickly the man recovered after witnessing his comrades' deaths. In that instant, he realized humans and demons were not so different. One chased money, the other chased energy. It descended into underground dungeons where the leader finally revealed what Das had come for. Gordon's earlier question now made sense. Das had come to buy slaves, not humans, but members of other races captured by mankind. His goal was to acquire an elf known for unwavering loyalty, someone capable of acting as a spy to destabilize the heroes. Meanwhile, back in the kingdom, Helen Cargill arrived. The king welcomed him with visible relief, and Helen accepted the mission without hesitation, vowing to rescue the princess and take the Demon King's head with the confidence of a shonen hero beginning a new arc. Back at the slave market, the traitorous leader asked what kind of slave Das desired. Das pointed toward a captured elf and calmly stated that the mercenary accompanying him would handle the payment. The mercenary exploded in shock, protesting like someone watching a friend order the most expensive dish on the menu using their wallet. One cold glance from Das silenced him instantly, forcing his agreement into stiff, terrified compliance. Das then ordered his companions to wait outside, explaining that he needed to inspect something alone. The merchant issued a warning, cautioning that the elf could be dangerous, the same way shopkeepers warn customers not to handle fragile merchandise. Das dismissed the concern, assuring him he would cover any losses if something went wrong. He examined the bound elf carefully, observing how humans had reduced a once proud race to chain commodities. A spark of anger stirred within the elf as he sensed the demonic aura surrounding Das. Unable to understand why such a being would take interest in him, Das offered him the chance to seek vengeance against mankind. The idea tempted the elf, but he made it clear that demons were no more trustworthy than humans. Das claimed he was different and proposed a contract 50 years of loyalty in exchange for freedom and protection. He reminded the elf that for a long-lived race, 50 years was little more than a brief interlude between story arcs and an ancient fantasy saga. The elf rejected the offer, stating that demons sought to destroy the world tree, the very foundation of elven belief. Trust, therefore, was impossible. Das did not argue. He understood the fear, knowing the situation felt as unnatural as a villain calling a timeout in the middle of a battle. Instead, he swore an oath under the sacred code of demons, pledging never to harm the world tree and to honor his promise as a demon. The weight of this oath matched the sanctity the world tree held for the elves. In return, he requested that the elf, Granada of the Maple tribe, swear 50 years of loyalty upon the world tree itself. Disturbed by the demon's strange sincerity, Granada agreed on one condition. He demanded to meet the Demon King who had supposedly issued such an oath. Das revealed that he himself was the Demon King. Granada mocked the claim instantly, stating that no Demon King would personally attend a slave market. He added that Demon Kings weakened when far from their towers. With smug confidence, he offered a wager. He would swear 100 years of service instead of 50 if Das could prove his identity. It was the kind of reckless bet characters made moments before realizing how badly they had misjudged everything. In the next instant, reality shifted. Granada found himself standing on the 5th floor of Das's tower. Das reminded him of the promised 100 years. The realization struck Granada like a plot twist he never saw coming. Though the truth finally sank in, it didn't stop him from complaining. He immediately began criticizing the tower like a gamer reviewing a broken survival base, remarking on its emptiness, the useless lower floors, and the 4th floor being overgrown and unguarded. He scoffed at the idea that such a place could withstand a hero's assault, claiming Das wouldn't last even a year, declaring he had no intention of serving in such a ruin. He sealed his mistake. In response, Das released a crushing wave of demonic pressure. The force slammed into Granada like a heavyweight finisher in a fighting anime, pinning him to the ground without a single blow. Terror flooded his mind as the contract he had agreed to resurfaced. Only then did the truth fully dawn on him. The tower stood in a region infested with catastrophic level monsters. Yet none dared approach. It was like living beside a volcano that remained dormant only because something even more terrifying resided at its core. Accepting reality, Granada bowed and swore 100 years of loyalty in the name of the Great World Tree. Deep down, he expected his first assignment to be something grim, perhaps even a chance to exact vengeance on humanity. Instead, Das instructed him to cook. Granada froze, utterly waffled. It felt like preparing for a climactic boss battle, only to be handed a grocery list. Confusion clouded his thoughts as he chopped vegetables in the kitchen. Soon after, Princess Erin joined him, cheerfully offering assistance like a friend suddenly joining a co-op game mid-session. The absurdity continued to pile up. Before long, everyone gathered in the fifth-floor dining hall, seated before a lavish feast that looked nothing like the lair of a demon king. Proceeding cautiously, Granada inquired about the girl, only to learn she was Princess Erin, the kingdom's first princess. Shock struck him once again. He had assumed she was merely a kidnapped noble. He questioned how such an empty tower could possibly withstand the hero destined to arrive. Dus offered no explanation, simply instructing him to sit and eat. He then revealed the true reason for purchasing Granada, the elf's extraordinary cooking skills. The princess continued, smiling as Granada sat there feeling as though he had wandered into the wrong story entirely. After the meal, Granada assumed his role would be guarding the fourth floor against approaching heroes. Deus rejected the idea immediately, explaining that if enemies reached that level, everything was already lost. It would mean they had crossed the Urgus Mountains. Only then did Dus reveal his real plan. Granada would infiltrate human society as a spy to see out chaos and disorder. Before that, however, Das needed to test his abilities. Sensing an opportunity to gain leverage, Granada agreed. Das laid out the rules. He would fight using only one hand and without drawing upon demonic power. If Granada emerged victorious, 50 years would be removed from his contract. Hearing this, Granada accepted with the resolve of a character granted a rare power-up quest. Their battle began immediately, movement sharp and deliberate. Darius quickly observed that Granada's technique remained refined and precise, untouched by years of enslavement. He even suspected that prolonged exposure to the tower's fourth floor had naturally strengthened the elf's body and magic. Granada unleashed powerful spells, revealing strength far beyond that of ordinary elves. His magic surged with confidence as he warned Darius not to underestimate him. Magically summoned roots erupted from the ground, wrapping tightly around Darius's leg. For a brief moment, Granada believed victory was finally within reach. Then a crushing presence descended and overwhelming pressure slammed into Granada, a brutal reminder of the being standing before him. His body froze, instincts screaming danger. Darius maintained his promise to restrain his strength. Yet the pressure alone made it difficult for Granada to breathe. Before he could respond, the fight ended in an instant. A single decisive strike from Darius dropped him to the ground, ending the battle and proving that the gap between them was far greater than Granada had ever imagined. From there, the story shifted to the city of Horton Walk, home to the Red Hawk mercenaries' headquarters. This time, the mercenaries welcomed Darius with warmth and respect, behaving like employees, greeting a once strict boss who had returned with a rare smile. Darius informed them that he intended to hire their services for an entire year. Their captain accepted immediately, asking about payment. One mercenary muttered under his breath, clearly irritated at how eagerly their leader bowed to the same man who had flattened them earlier. In response, Darius placed a heavy sack of gold onto the table. The sound alone shifted the atmosphere. The mercenaries straightened instantly, enthusiasm igniting as they swore loyalty without hesitation. Their captain even considered in private replacing some members with a stronger team later on. Darius then informed them that the man beside him would be joining as a new member and would relay all future orders. The group hesitated until Granada stepped forward, seeing his swollen, bruised face erased all doubt. Sympathy replaced suspicion as they welcomed him like a long-lost companion, recognizing that he had suffered under Diaz just as they had. Shared trauma bonded them faster than any introduction ever could. Watching them, Diaz noted that despite their rough demeanor, these mercenaries were seasoned veterans and not easily replaced. His thoughts drifted to the only hero who had answered Hilderin's call, Helen, the hero renowned for slaying the demon king of lust. Now in command of the mercenaries, Diaz revealed their first mission. Gather every fragment of information related to Helen, who was currently serving the Hilderan kingdom. The mercenaries stood straighter, determination clear in their eyes. With their assignment set, Diaz departed Horton Walk, heading back toward his tower while already planning the next stage of his strategy like a tactician, setting up the next episode's cliffhanger. After assigning Granada to oversee the investigation, Diaz decided it was finally time to strengthen himself. All demonic energy points that could have been used to reinforce the tower or empower himself had already been spent, leaving only one remaining option. His thoughts turned to the Soul Flower, a rare mana crystal formed over years of absorbing untouched natural energy. Consuming one could grant immense power. He believed the Urgus Mountains were the ideal place to search fierce mana storms, and dangerous monsters had kept humans away for centuries, preserving the land in its natural state. While soul flowers couldn't compare to pure demonic energy, they were far better than having nothing. When he shared his plan, Gordon warned that searching for one was like hunting a needle in a mountain-sized haystack, and that monsters would attack the moment they sensed weakness. Diaz explained that monsters weren't the real issue. The true challenge was locating the flowers without advanced mana detection. Their discussion was interrupted by a soft knock. Princess Ernam peeked in a small blue slime, bouncing happily atop her head like a living accessory. Both Diaz and Gordon flinched at the sight. With a shy smile, she admitted she had never expected to be allowed beyond the palace walls and was grateful she had come. Before she could continue, Diaz lifted her up, instructed her to hold on, and launched them into the sky. They shot upward at breathtaking speed. From above, Ernan gazed down in awe, seeing the world like a first-time traveler staring out an airplane window. The sunrise, the clouds, the open land. Everything felt unreal. Her thoughts drifted back to life in the palace where every day felt ident. Training magic, studying history, repeating routines without variation. She had never imagined anything different. Its soaring above the Urgus Mountains made her feel as though she had stepped into someone else's adventure. Das ignored her reverie and reminded her of the task at hand. She asked him to use her name since they would be together often. He agreed, but warned her not to forget her responsibility. Failure to locate the soul flowers would result in punishment. She immediately apologized and summoned her water and wind spirits to begin the search. Diaz expected the process to take time, but he knew her method far surpassed wandering blindly. Suddenly, Ern cried out, claiming she had found something. Diaz descended rapidly and saw monsters clustered around a glowing flower. Massive creatures emerged from the shadows. Diaz identified them as a demonic race that had strayed from the demon realm long ago. As their king, he ordered them to step aside and leave the flower untouched. They reft their hatred for humankind burned intensely, and they declared their intent to kill him instead. Das released a cold laugh. Gordon had been right. Expecting reason for monsters was pointless. He incinerated them without hesitation. The creatures fought back with desperate ferocity, defending what they believed was theirs. Their screams blended with a roar of spreading flames. When one commanded the others to attack the weakest and pointed toward Ern, they charged and frenzied them with a single burst of fire. Ern remained calm, recalling how even ogres could fall through coordination. Yet, these monsters never even reached her. Diaz unleashed a massive surge of demonic energy that erased everything around them. When the smoke cleared, only Diaz remained standing. Ernan stared at him in open amazement, eyes shining with excitement. He remarked dryly that humans only understood power once they witnessed it firsthand. That was when she noticed a ruby-colored spiritual flower buried in the snow, radiating pure ice and water mana. He warned her not to grow greedy. If she found more, she would be rewarded. She searched until exhaustion claimed her, but found nothing else. Back at the tower, Darius reflected on her true identity as Hilderan's first princess. Saving her once had felt like a mistake. Yet now, she seemed far more useful than he had originally expected. Gordon soon arrived with news from Granada. Helen and 32 heroes had already left the capital. However, rather than heading toward the Urgus Mountains, they were following the standard route, gathering allies, accepting village quests, and steadily leveling up. Gordon presented several strategies, urging Darius to examine them carefully. Darius casually tossed the proposals aside, leaving Gordon stunned. He made it clear that he had no intention of placing even a single monster or barrier in the hero's path. Weak challenges, in his view, only forged stronger heroes. He then instructed Gordon to send word to Granada and have the mercenaries accompany the heroes, allowing them to earn the hero's trust. Gordon complained inwardly that his master never followed common sense, and voiced his concern about how the tower could possibly be defended in its current condition. Darius reassured him that the tower would be reinforced, but when he mentioned doing so with the help of a dwarf, Gordon immediately protested. Housing a dwarf alongside a human and an elf, he argued, would turn them into a laughingstock. Darius ignored the complaint and explained that the true prize was not the dwarf himself, but the advanced magical weapons that only dwarves were capable of forging. His next move was both simple and ruthless. Heroes always expected weak monsters on the first floor of a Demon King's tower. This time, they would instead be greeted by rows of cannons. Gordon immediately grasped the implications, realizing that such an ambush would be impossible for the heroes to anticipate. Shaking his head, he remarked that the plan shattered every established rule. Suddenly, he froze before shouting that another kidnapping had occurred. The view shifted to the underground dwarf city of Wolfner. There, Logger Friedrich, the greatest blacksmith among the dwarves, worked quietly at his forge, completely unaware that he had just become the Demon King's next target. The scene lingered on Wolfner, the bustling city of dwarves, as Darius entered in disguise. He recalled having fought countless dwarves before his regression, yet this marked his first time setting foot in their city. Darius stepped into a shop, known as the Midnight Inn. Upon arrival, he handed money to a man and explained that he had come to commission a weapon, though he did not know where to begin. He asked to be directed to the most outstanding blacksmith in the city. The man accepted the money and laughed, commenting that for a human, Darius certainly understood how to conduct business. Darius replied by remarking that he had heard dwarves love money just as much as heroes did. The man smiled and explained that Darius should head deeper into the city. He described a massive hole that would be impossible to miss and instructed him to board the lift there. Once inside, his identification would be checked, and he would be taken to the desired floor. The man further explained that this was a two-step security system designed to identify intruders. He then instructed Darius to go to the lowest floor in the deepest room where he would find the city's finest blacksmith, Logger Friedrich. Following those directions, Darius took the same route and eventually arrived at Logger's domain. As he observed the forge, Darius thought that the display of metallurgy made it seem as though the metal itself was dancing. He questioned whether Logger truly was the best blacksmith, then considered how much easier things would be if he simply abducted him quietly. Reaching out, Darius attempted to place a hand on Logger's shoulder. At that moment, Logger sensed his presence and forcefully raised his hammer. A powerful aura erupted, overwhelming Darius and hurling him backward under the sheer pressure. Darius realized that Logger had detected even the faint trace of demonic energy and wondered if this dwarf might be more formidable than expected. Logger charged at him, hammer raised. Darius caught the weapon mid-swing and declared that Logger was a hero. Logger loudly affirmed this, identifying himself as Logger Friedrich, the blacksmith who carried the power of heroes. He condemned Darius for daring to enter Dwarven land as a demon. Darius responded with a smirk, stating that Logger would not leave the city alive, and remarking that despite all the bravado, Logger was surprisingly weak. He then clarified that he was not merely a demon, but a demon king. With that declaration, Darius seized Logger by the throat, causing him to groan in pain. Hearing the commotion, several soldiers rushed over and called out to Logger, apologizing for interrupting his work and asking about the noise they had heard. Moments later, they realized Logger was gone, shouting that there was an intruder. They ordered all exits sealed and demanded a full search of the facility. The scene shifted again, revealing Darius holding Logger high above the city. Darius warned him that making a single sound would result in instant death. Logger wondered why a demon king had come and assumed it must be for their princess. Darius dismissed the assumption, stating that the princess did not interest him. Logger insisted that this was a lie. Darius countered by mentioning rumors that dwarven blacksmiths dug underground escape passages for emergencies. Grinding his teeth as tears streamed down his face, Logger convinced himself that the demon king truly had come for the princess. He cursed his own fate, thinking that the only reason he had lived quietly until now was his fear of confronting demon kings. He lamented that this misfortune had fallen upon him. It was then revealed that Logger was in truth weak. Darius noted that coaxing information from him would not be easy and proposed an alternative. He would kidnap the princess instead and allow Logger to live, provided that Logger guided him. Logger reacted in shock, struggling to understand Darius's intentions. He imagined the consequences of a rumor spreading that a selfish hero had sold out the princess to save his own life. Such a story, he realized, would forever change how the other dwarves viewed him. Crying out in despair, he cursed Darius as a vile and evil creature, believing that everyone already knew he was weak and that such a rumor would easily be believed. Darius then presented him with a choice: either sell out the princess or walk away under his own power. Internally, Darius knew Logger would choose betrayal, as he clearly wished to avoid torture. He promised that if Lager cooperated, his safety would be guaranteed, swearing this vow upon the Demon King's standards. Lager recalled that those standards were treated as sacred among Demon Kings and believed that a vow made upon them could never be broken. Coming to a decision, Lager suddenly forced a dramatic smile and agreed to lead Darius through the underground passage. Darius commented on the expression, remarking that it made him feel sick. Back at Lager's workshop, his status was listed as absent while knights searched the area. At the same time, Princess Louise west of the Dwarfen Kingdom stood nearby, dressed in a strange outfit. She cried as she wondered where Lager had gone while crafting her weapon. One knight explained that they believed he had been kidnapped. Louise angrily ordered him to be silent, insisting that Lager was a hero and that it made no sense for a hero to be abducted. The knight carefully explained that while Lager was a hero, he was also a blacksmith, which explained his lack of combat ability. Louise again demanded silence and ordered the knights to find the kidnapper and bring him before her at once. The knight acknowledged her command. She then issued a dark warning, stating that if they failed, she would personally rip off their heads. The knight once again acknowledged her authority. The scene shifted to the secret passage. Lager led Darius through a narrow tunnel, walking ahead while Darius followed behind. Darius was forced to stare at Lager's large backside the entire time, which steadily irritated him. He complained about how long he had to endure the sight. Trembling, Lager explained that it could not be helped due to the tunnel's tight space, and urged him to be patient, saying they were almost there. Darius ordered him to move faster despite his large build. Eventually, Lager emerged from the tunnel and led Darius to a castle. He declared that his role was finished, explaining that he had fulfilled his part by revealing the underground passage and that Darius was now on his own. His voice shook as he announced his departure. Darius's expression darkened as he called out the absurdity of Lager's claim. Trembling, Lager reminded him of the vow made upon the Demon King's standards, insisting that his safety had been guaranteed. Darius responded with a smirk, dismissing the vow as worthless and stating that he did not care in the slightest. Lager broke down in tears, questioning what kind of Demon King Darius truly was. Darius casually wondered aloud what should be done with him now. Crying, Lager regretted not selling out the princess earlier. Lowering his head, he claimed that he was actually quite useful, boasting that no one could rival his metallurgy skills. He promised to forge any weapon Darius desired. Darius noted the irony of a hero willingly offering service to a demon king. Lager argued that there was nothing strange about such an arrangement and offered himself completely, even suggesting he could act as a spy. Darius stated that if Lager swore allegiance to him, he would be spared. Lager expressed his gratitude and praised the great demon king, though in his heart he mocked Darius as a fool, convinced he would never truly obey. The scene changed once more as Darius brought Lager to Burgess's tower on the 4th floor. Lager froze completely, stiff as a statue. Gordon, terrified, exclaimed that the Demon King had brought back a dwarf, Noah, a hero dwarf. Darius ordered him to be silent. At that moment, Granada contacted them, stating that he had a report to deliver, only to react in shock upon seeing the dwarf. Darius instructed him to give the report later. The princess then addressed Lager, asking whether he had come to save her, quickly adding that he probably had not. Confused, Lager asked Darius why he had been brought there, reminding him that he had been promised freedom. Darius calmly stated that no such promise had been made. Lager insisted that mercy had clearly been guaranteed. Darius confirmed that mercy had indeed been granted. Lager was still alive. The scene returned to the station where preparations for the hero's journey were underway. A holographic communication link shimmered into existence as Granada finally delivered his report with steady composure, explaining that rumors were spreading rapidly among the heroes. Intelligence suggested that the newly emerged Demon King wielded black flames, a belief that had driven the heroes to equip themselves with fire-resistant gear in preparation for battle. Granada continued his report by revealing another rumor circulating among them. Many heroes believed the Demon King had refrained from unleashing demonic beasts out of fear. His prolonged silence was not interpreted as strategy, but as weakness. In their view, restraint signified hesitation rather than calculation. Gas listened without any visible reaction. His expression remained unreadable, his posture perfectly still. When he finally responded, his judgment was cold and dismissive. From his perspective, the heroes had never lost their desire to kill. When Das issued his final directive, ordering Granada to continue monitoring the heroes and report any changes without delay, the connection severed shortly after, leaving Das alone with his thoughts. He reflected on the Demon King's approach of deliberately withholding demonic beasts. Hero morale was being eroded slowly and methodically. Their expectations were subtly distorted. Yet what unsettled him more was the realization that this demon king possessed an unusually profound understanding of human psychology. Dacis wondered whether such a figure had ever existed before. The thought sent a rare chill through him, followed almost immediately by relief. This demon king was not his enemy. The scene then shifted to Dacis' tower, its interior cold and oppressive. There he issued orders to the dwarf blacksmith, Lager Friedrich. Fire cannons were to be installed on the tower's first floor, but with one absolute restriction. Mana stones were strictly forbidden. The command sent Lager into immediate panic. Constructing such weapons without mana stones bordered on impossibility, and even if completed, their effectiveness against heroes would be severely compromised. This silenced any resistance instantly, declaring that discovering a solution was the blacksmith's responsibility alone. He explained his reasoning clearly. Heroes were favored by the dimension itself, granting them exceptionally sharp sensitivity to energy. Any trap powered by mana stones would be detected long before activation. That was precisely why mana stones could not be used. When Lager attempted to object again, Dacis' demeanor darkened. A sphere of black magic formed calmly in his hand as he reminded the dwarf of the reason he had been brought there. Lager was known as the greatest blacksmith. If he failed, replacements were plentiful. Crushed emotionally, Lager hastily revealed an alternative method. Lager explained that he had once developed a device capable of completely erasing mana traces. The research had taken 3 years, and the finished prototype remained in his workshop within the dwarf kingdom of Wolfner. Suspicion hardened Dacis' expression as he demanded confirmation that this was not another desperate fabrication. Trembling and in tears, Lager swore his honesty. After brief consideration, Das chose to believe him, though not without precautions. A purple rune-etched collar was secured around Lager's neck. Das explained its function with disturbing casualness. The restraint could sever the wearer's head instantly with a single gesture and also distorted perception, preventing others from clearly recognizing Lager's face. Any attempt to remove it would be interpreted as escape and result in immediate death. Fully grasping his situation, Lager collapsed and swore absolute obedience. After issuing further instructions, Dacis departed with Lager. Together, they traveled across multiple kingdoms in search of rare materials and compatible components. The journey lasted nearly a month, during which Dee stored every item within a spatial pocket, preserving each carefully. Their final destination was Wolfner, the dwarf kingdom. By the time they arrived, chaos had already taken hold. A massive boulder crashed down near a group of dwarves, shattering stone and scattering debris. At its center stood Princess Louise Weft, radiating fury. More than a month and a half had passed without any sign of Lager's capture. An elderly dwarf nervously attempted to explain that Lager had constructed countless underground tunnels over the years, and that despite extensive efforts, he had likely escaped. Louise dismissed the explanation outright, concluding instead that Lager must have been kidnapped. In a violent outburst, she seized the old dwarf and issued a deadline of 2 weeks. Failure would result in total extermination. Orders were immediately given to collapse every tunnel Lager had ever created, and the dwarves rushed to comply. As the soldiers dispersed, a concealed section of the wall behind Louise shifted silently. One of Lager's secret tunnels opened. She sensed the disturbance instantly and turned. Although the interference mask prevented facial recognition, the tunnel itself was unmistakable. Only Lager could have known of it. Frozen in fear, Lager revealed himself unintentionally. Louise's rage erupted. A golden aura burst violently around her as she accused him of fleeing to avoid forging her weapon. Lager's frantic attempts to explain only fueled her fury. Declaring absolute authority, she claimed ownership over him and condemned him to lifelong servitude. As she prepared to strike, a violent force detonated between them. Louise was hurled backward, crashing into the ground before regaining her stance effortlessly. Dust filled the chamber, and when it cleared, Dust stepped forward calmly, ordering Lager to retrieve the equipment at once. Unable to identify him due to the interference, Louise demanded his identity. Das introduced himself simply as the master of the blacksmith she had been abusing. Enraged, Louise launched herself into the air. Their fists collided at terrifying speed, shock waves tearing through the chamber. The exchange resembled a clash between monsters rather than mortals. Louise caught one of Das's strikes midair with sheer strength and countered with a brutal blow that sent him crashing into the ceiling. She turned back toward Lager, only for Das to reappear instantly and slam her into the ground. The battle escalated rapidly. Das recognized her without hesitation. Louise was the second daughter of Princess Weft, a being of exceptional power even before her growth had fully matured. Allowing her to develop further would turn her into a severe threat. Eliminating her now was the logical choice. But doing so would require releasing his full demonic power. As the battle raged on, Logger frantically dismantled a massive mana phantom machine designed to erase and conceal mana traces. Deus pressed him relentlessly, warning that his survival depended on completing the task within a minute. Louise's power surged even higher. Dus calculated how long he could continue without revealing his true strength. Logger finally shouted that the dismantling was complete. Seizing the opening, Dus delivered a devastating kick to Louise's chest, smashing her into the ground in a massive explosion. Without hesitation, he opened his subspace pocket and ordered Logger to move. Louise rose from the dust, initially dismissive, until she realized that Logger and the machine had vanished. Her soldiers arrived moments later. She mocked their slowness before issuing orders for immediate pursuit. Then she stopped. Every tunnel had collapsed. Grinding her teeth, Louise finally understood the truth. Logger had never intended to return. Within the first floor of Berg's tower, the Demon King Gia stood before a colossal magical apparatus. Behind him, Princess Own of the Hilderan Kingdom stared in disbelief. Nearby, Logger, now acting as his devoted subordinate, examined the reinforced framework. Das acknowledged the report and ordered activation. Demonic energy surged from his body as the device roared to life. A translucent system interface appeared before him, requesting synchronization. Without hesitation, DS authorized it. The process completed instantly. A final system update confirmed that the Mana Phantom had acknowledged Dadius as its master. Its power source was fully converted, shifting entirely from mana to pure demonic energy. Dadius turned his gaze toward Logger. The dwarf reacted with barely restrained excitement, insisting fervently that he had not interfered in the process in any way. Even so, amazement overwhelmed him. The fusion of the Manhavan with the tower, let alone the complete conversion of its energy source, surpassed anything previously thought possible. Logger immediately recognized it as a breakthrough beyond even what the original creator could have envisioned. Princess Own stepped closer, her eyes gleaming as she stared at the awakened structure. Dadius casually suggested that she tested herself. Delighted by the opportunity, she eagerly began preparing a spell. Complex magical symbols formed rapidly as a massive sphere of multicolored magic condensed in the air. Logger panicked instantly. The thought of releasing such overwhelming power after he had just finished cleaning the tower nearly drove him to tears. His frantic pleas were completely ignored as Dadius focused solely on observing the phenomenon. A spell of that scale should have been detectable far beyond the tower's walls. Dadius moved toward the entrance and examined the outside world. There was nothing, no visual disturbance, no fluctuation in perception. The magic did not leak in the slightest. The effect was immediately apparent. A tower fully synchronized with a Manhavan completely concealed all internal magical activity. Curiosity stirred within Dadius. He extended his demonic energy and attempted to manipulate the tower itself. In an instant, the entire structure vanished from existence. Moments later, with another gesture, it reappeared exactly as before. The realization struck him with quiet intensity. The tower could now be concealed or summoned at will. Though controlling this power freely would take time, Dios immediately understood its future value. A restrained smile formed as demonic light flickered within his eyes. Outside the inner chamber, Logger finally lost all restraint. His excitement burst forth as he begged for permission to examine the device further, nearly requesting permission to dismantle both the magical apparatus and the tower itself before hastily correcting his words. He declared the discovery unprecedented in all recorded history, his behavior bordering on obsession. Dadius studied him carefully, noting how completely Logger had lost control. After brief consideration, permission was granted under one condition. If Logger annihilated the heroes trapped on the first floor, he would be free to do as he wished afterward. Crimson energy surged around Logger as he immediately began chanting, fully immersing himself in what he now considered sacred research. Dadius then turned to Princess Own and calmly proposed that she confront the heroes who had reached the fourth floor. She hesitated, momentarily taken aback, though her protest carried a playful tone. Dadius reminded her that she was also a gifted spirit and that she had no intention of returning to her former royal life. Even as he spoke, Dadius recognized the weight of his decision. She remained an innocent princess, unfamiliar with the cruelty of the world, and asking her to oppose her own kind carried undeniable gravity. Ernan fell silent, uncertainty flickering through her thoughts as she considered what powers she could even use. Before she could settle on an answer, Dadius stopped her. Combat would not be necessary. All she needed to do was disrupt the heroes and openly reveal herself as their enemy. Success would be rewarded with another wish. She met his gaze, nodded slowly, and agreed on one condition. She wished to be introduced not as a princess, but as his subordinate. Dadius accepted without hesitation. Her face lit up with unmistakable joy, her excitement barely contained. Even so, Dadius instructed her to follow his orders precisely. Sometime later, Dadius sat in silence, studying the system screen floating before him. The plan unfolded clearly in his mind. The first floor would thin the heroes' numbers through overwhelming monarch cannon fire. On the fourth floor, Princess Ern would serve as bait, drawing in survivors to be eliminated. Even so, the strategy was insufficient. With more than 200 heroes advancing, it would not erase even half of them. Only one option remained, strengthening himself further. His gaze shifted to a radiant treasure resting in his hand. Dense demonic energy coiled around it as it shimmered faintly. Elsewhere, Princess Ern stood within a land of endless snow and biting cold. After several failed attempts, uncertainty lingered between them. Their earlier success now felt less like certainty and more like coincidence. Suddenly, a towering figure appeared before them. Dadius reacted instantly, dark energy gathering around his raised arm. The interruption irritated him. The massive figure bowed deeply, identifying himself as crew of the Blue Forest tribe. He and his people sought the Demon King's protection. The gathered tribe fell to their knees, confessing that their ancestors were once demons who had betrayed the demon realm. Bearing that original sin, they now sought redemption through service. Dadius regarded them coldly, immediately recognizing their true intent. They desired power. His gaze sharpened as he noted that their affinity for demonic energy far exceeded their reliance on spirit blossoms. At a silent command, a sealed box was opened. Inside rested a grim lotus encased in frost. Dadius recognized it instantly, understanding why it had eluded him until now. He acknowledged their foresight and their ability to negotiate. Unusual traits for a tribe renowned for brute strength. After brief consideration, Dadius accepted only one. A demonic sigil embedded itself into Crew's body. Overwhelming power surged across the frozen land as his form twisted and transformed, transcending into a true demon. Crew knelt in absolute submission, offering his life and loyalty. The rest of the tribe followed without hesitation. The scene shifted once more to Urgis Mountain Tower. Power surged throughout the structure. Outside, an orc legion assembled in disciplined ranks. On the first floor, loggers stood ready alongside 60 monocannons. Dadius reviewed the battlefield one final time. Every piece was positioned exactly as planned. The tower was secured. Princess Ona awaited her role on the fourth floor. Everything was ready. His dark eyes hardened as he focused on the approaching enemy. He would repay the humiliation of his previous life. Elsewhere, the heroes gazed upward at the towering mountain before them. Urgis Mountain loomed like a silent challenge as they advanced with a single purpose to slay the Demon King. The heroes' preparation base stood behind them as a magnificent city, a place where countless legends were said to begin. Within its grand central hall, a lavish banquet filled the space with light and sound. The celebration honored the heroes on the eve of their final march. Laughter echoed beneath towering ceilings as music flowed freely and glasses clinked together. Warriors, nobles, knights, mages, mercenaries, and merchants gathered as one, indulging in triumph and anticipation. Among them, a young hero clad in polished armor stood beside the elderly Lord Castellan. The Lord regarded him warmly, remarking that someone with such achievements carried himself with remarkable humility. The hero expressed gratitude for the generosity of the host and the banquet prepared in their honor. Lord Castellan in turn spoke of his pride in witnessing a journey destined to be etched into history. After a brief pause, he proposed that the hero, Lord Hill, and addressed the assembled crowd. Hillen hesitated, visibly uncomfortable with the attention. Yet the Lord pressed on, noting that such words would raise morale before the march. With no graceful way to refuse, Hillen reluctantly agreed. Seizing the moment, Lord Castellan announced to the hall that Hillen wished to speak. The noise gradually faded as all eyes turned toward him. Hillen stepped forward, gathering himself as calm replaced his hesitation. Facing the assembled crowd, He acknowledged every group present from nobles and knights to mercenaries and merchants alike. He declared that their long expedition had finally reached its decisive moment. With unwavering confidence, Helen spoke of their march for justice, boasting that it had frightened the Demon King so thoroughly that not a single monster had dared obstruct their path. Laughter erupted throughout the hall as confidence surged among the attendees. Yet Helen tempered their enthusiasm, reminding them not to lower their guard. Every possible preparation, he assured them, had already been made. His resolve sharpened as he proclaimed that the following day would mark the end of the foolish Demon King. Raising his glass, righteous fervor blazing in his eyes, he invoked the kidnapping of the Hilderan Kingdom's crown princess, Princess Ern, declaring it time for the world to remember who truly held power. The speech ended in a fiery declaration of dominance, and the hall exploded into thunderous cheers. Amid the chaos, Granada the elf observed everything from a distance. Calm and analytical, he noted that the size of the expedition had neither grown nor diminished, exactly as the Demon King had predicted. Reflecting on the speech, Granada acknowledged that Helen's charisma was the true driving force behind the expedition's success. Helen had secured funding from the guilds and retained the loyalty of even the most unreliable mercenaries. Yet, unease lingered. Granada's thoughts returned to the last tower he had investigated, entirely empty. That unsettling memory made him question whether the final confrontation would truly be as straightforward as it appeared. A dark, treacherous thought briefly surfaced whether now would be the perfect moment to betray the heroes. Panic seized him instantly. He chastised himself for even entertaining such an idea. Subjugating the Demon King would finally free him from his curse, a future that undeniably benefited him. Shaking off the thought, Granada decided to clear his mind. He stepped outside for fresh air, intending to send a report. Later that night, beneath the glow of a full moon, Granada stood alone on a high balcony. A faintly glowing device rested in his hand as he communicated quietly. From the other side came a calm report confirming arrival at Holton Walk and stating that the climb would begin the following day, this time unmistakably belonging to the Demon King Deus. His tone carried cold authority as he issued final warnings. Granada was told to beware of the snow during the climb, to remain vigilant at night, and to heed one final cryptic instruction. When the tower door opened, he was never to be near it. The connection ended abruptly. Granada stood frozen, unable to grasp the meaning of the warning. Confusion weighed heavily on his mind. Suddenly, a presence emerged behind him. Startled, Granada turned to find Helen standing there relaxed and observant. Quickly noticing Granada's tension, Helen offered him a drink, an elven fruit wine, known for its calming warmth. Granada accepted, and as he drank, his nerves gradually settled. Helen casually remarked that Granada seemed troubled and asked whether he truly believed they could succeed against the Demon King. The tone was light, almost teasing, but the question lingered heavily. Granada hesitated before responding. As he did, Helen stared into his own cup, his reflection wavering. The cheerful expression he had worn earlier slowly faded, replaced by quiet honesty. He admitted uncertainty. Granada was caught off guard by the sudden candor. Helen continued, explaining that although people trusted him and followed his lead, attacking a Demon King's tower had always been hell. It had never once been an easy victory. Attempting reassurance, Granada mentioned Helen's past achievement, defeating the Demon King of Lust, implying that a newly emerged Demon King should not be as dangerous. As the words left his mouth, Granada realized something unsettling. Very little was actually known about how Helen had killed the Demon King of Lust. Growing curious, he asked about that battle. Helen avoided the subject. His expression shifted once more. Returning to the familiar heroic facade, he credited his past victory to the brave comrades who had always stood at the front facing monsters head-on. Turning to Granada, he placed a firm hand on his shoulder and reaffirmed his trust in him. With renewed confidence, Helen declared that he would lead the coming battle and asked Granada to guard his flank. Granada nodded in agreement. Satisfied, Helen wrapped an arm around him and guided him back toward the banquet hall. The two walked side by side, Helen leading his elven companion, his expression calm and unreadable, concealing the true nature of their alliance. Later, alone with his thoughts, Helen reflected on the conversation. A cynical smirk crossed his face as his gaze drifted to a ring set with a red gemstone. In that moment, the heroic mask vanished, revealing something far darker beneath. His true thoughts surfaced clearly as he silently placed his expectations upon Granada once again. The following morning, the preparation base buzzed with activity. As the massive expedition finally departed, citizens lined the streets, cheering loudly. Words of encouragement filled the air as the heroes marched forward. Cries praising Lord Granada and Lord Wharton echoed throughout the city. At the head of the procession, Granada marched with calm focus, his gaze fixed straight ahead. Beside him, Helen walked proudly, basking in the admiration of the crowd. Soon the city disappeared behind them, and the noise faded into silence. The expedition entered the harsh Urgist mountain canyon. Endless snow-covered cliffs surrounded them as biting winds cut through the air. The massive force wound its way through the desolate landscape, the cold their constant companion. Casual conversations emerged. Earlier worries slowly faded. Some remarked on the surprisingly mild weather, noting the clear sky and lack of snowfall. Confidence grew as others claimed that reaching the tower would be easy at this pace. Laughter followed along with jokes about the absence of rumored disaster-class monsters and claims that any such creatures were likely too frightened to appear with Helen leading the expedition. That confidence shattered abruptly. A warrior felt a tap on his shoulder. When he pulled his hand back, it was coated in sticky, purple slime. Confusion turned to horror as he turned around. Towering over them stood a massive ghoul. Panic erupted instantly as screams tore through the canyon. More ghouls poured in from all sides. Helen's presence cut through the chaos as he raised his sword, his resolve unshaken. Orders were issued swiftly, placing the expedition on full alert. The narrow canyon became a battlefield. Knights shielded the mages and pushed forward, steel clashing against undead flesh as magic lit up the frozen terrain. Suddenly, a new warning echoed through the ranks. A colossal skeletal frost giant emerged from the canyon wall. Its massive body formed entirely of ice. Shock rippled through the expedition. Helen immediately ordered a retreat, declaring his intent to face the monster alone. As the expedition fled the canyon, Helen charged forward. Blue energy crashed against the frost giant. Yet, the creature remained unmoved. Undeterred, Helen pressed the assault. The frost giant's crimson eyes glowed as it swung its massive arm downward. Helen met it with a powerful upward slash, shattering the icy limb and sending shock waves through the canyon. Without pause, he destroyed the creature's remaining arm and carved through its massive frame, overwhelming it with relentless force. Seizing the perfect moment, Helen unleashed a final flurry of devastating attacks and signaled the expedition to escape. The heroes did not hesitate. They surged past him as explosions erupted behind them. Helen continued to hold the frost giant at bay until the last moment. Enraged and denied its prey, the monster released a final furious roar before collapsing inward and self-destructing in a colossal explosion that shook the canyon. The survivors stumbled into a nearby snowy forest, collapsing from exhaustion and shock. Conversations quickly turned grim as they reflected on the horrors they had endured. Yet casualties were low. Many credited their survival to Helen's overwhelming strength. Speculations spread rapidly. Rumors claimed that Helen had absorbed the power of the Demon King of Lust, placing him on par with the Demon King himself. Confidence returned as faith in Helen solidified. Granada listened in silence, wondering if Helen truly could defeat the Demon King. That hope was short-lived. Ahead of them stood another threat, a tribe of massive blue-kinned orcs led by a towering chieftain with curved horns. There was no time to rest. Granada immediately recognized them as pole beings infused with demonic energy, servants of the Demon King. As the chieftain stepped forward, the ground beneath the heroes began to tremble. A deep rumble echoed through the mountains. Deeza's warning resurfaced in Granada's mind. Terror spread across his face as understanding dawned. The snow began to shift. Cracks spread across the mountainside as ice groaned under its own weight. The sound of an avalanche filled the air. Panique sum Granada. As the disaster struck, a massive avalanche tore down the mountainside, burying the entire expedition in an instant. Snow and ice swallowed warriors, mages, and heroes alike, dragging them into frozen chaos. Granada's final scream was crushed beneath the overwhelming weight. Far away, within his towering fortress, Demon King Deez sat calmly upon his throne. Holographic screens displayed the unfolding catastrophe. One by one, the images of the heroes vanished. A sinister smirk spread across his face as he watched their final moments. Leaning back, his eyes gleamed with cold satisfaction. His plan had succeeded perfectly. This time, none of them would escape. Still seated upon his throne, Deez remained utterly composed. His posture showed no tension, and his expression betrayed nothing. When he spoke, there was no emotion in his voice, only absolute certainty. The design he described had been set in motion long before the heroes realized it. The cold intensified until it became suffocating and damage reports became meaningless as the blizzard erased all sense of order. Everything within that frozen domain was consumed. Amid the roaring wind, Dees raised his voice, issuing commands through the storm. He ordered the heroes to establish a temporary camp and search for those scattered by the earlier catastrophe. Every movement was slowed by relentless snow and freezing gusts, turning even the simplest actions into exhausting struggles. As the calamity unfolded, the Demon King continued his explanation with calm detachment. The second command had already been issued. When darkness finally settled, the situation worsened even further. From within the forest's deepest shadows, ghoul-type monsters emerged, their forms blending almost perfectly with the snow. Massive forest beasts followed soon after, each heavy step shaking the frozen ground beneath the heroes' feet. One of them froze in place as recognition struck, realizing that orc monsters had appeared once again. Weapons were drawn at once, and the heroes tightened their formation, preparing themselves for yet another battle. From a distance, Granada ground his teeth together. Frustration warped his expression as he mentally cursed the Demon King's recklessness. Events were escalating far faster than anticipated, spiraling well beyond the limits of calculated warfare. At last, the Demon King himself acted. A grim smile spread across his face as he advanced without hesitation. Avalanche by day and monsters by night. The cycle was merciless and unending. Long before the heroes could fully comprehend the true nature of the trap, exhaustion would begin to eat away at both their bodies and their minds. Their collapse was no longer a possibility, it was inevitable. 3 days passed in what felt like a never-ending nightmare. A constant struggle balanced precariously between survival and death. By the time the heroes reached the highest summit of the Urgus Mountains, the toll was undeniable. Their movements had slowed, their breathing had grown heavy, and their strength was visibly depleted. One night, confusion spread when someone quietly pointed out that the Demon King's tower was nowhere to be seen. The realization rippled through the group like a shock wave, freezing them in disbelief. Dees raised his voice, disbelief cutting sharply through his words as he emphasized that a tower was supposed to stand at the summit. Before the heroes could move, a commander stepped forward and halted him. With a firm stance in a restrained but resolute tone, the commander declared the mission a failure, stating that continuing any further would only lead to meaningless loss of life. From that point onward, survival had to take precedence over victory. Dees froze. He turned slowly, shock plainly visible on his face. The response he received was unwavering, tinged with apology, yet unchanged. Grinding his teeth, Dees remained silent. 6 days after entering the Urgus Mountains, the Demon King's tower was finally discovered. The moment it appeared, fury erupted among the heroes. When the tower gates were forced open, confidence surged once more through the heroes' ranks. One knight laughed dismissively, declaring the first floor nothing more than a nest of weak enemies and urging everyone to advance without hesitation. That was when the Demon King spoke. His voice echoed coldly throughout the tower, reverberating from every direction at once. A chilling smile spread across his face as his mere presence became suffocating. The moment the tower doors opened, those who stepped inside were cast directly into hell. Magical cannon constructs materialized across the battlefield, rising into position and completely encircling the heroes. Lightning tore violently through the air, its roar deafening. They stared ahead in disbelief as the sheer scale of the threat revealed itself. Any lingering confidence shattered instantly. From within the control chamber, the Demon King observed calmly. This had only been the opening strike. Below, Dees struggled to steady himself. He tightened his grip on his sword and forced his body upright, his breathing uneven. Confusion and rage turned violently within him, as nothing he had just witnessed aligned with logic, strategy, or any battle experience he possessed. Through the drifting smoke, Granada emerged. Though visibly shaken, he remained unharmed and reported that he had narrowly avoided the cannon strike. Relief briefly crossed Dees' face. Without hesitation, he pushed for advancing to the next floor. Granada hesitated, carefully studying him now that only the two of them remained. The danger was undeniable. Dees responded firmly, reminding him of his past victory over the Demon King of lust and the power gained from that battle. Compared to that ordeal, this enemy was not beyond reach. As long as they stood together, victory was still possible. After a moment of silence, Granada agreed, and the two advanced side by side. The second floor was empty. The third floor was no different. Slowly, anger crept across Dees' expression. The absence of enemies felt deeply unnatural. A tower of such scale should have been crawling with monsters. Yet, there was nothing, no movement, no hostility, not even lingering mana. As Hillen voiced his frustration aloud, Granada remained silent, sensing deliberate intent behind the emptiness. If both floors were completely vacant, then the battlefield itself was being rearranged by a powerful hand. His thoughts inevitably turned to Princess Ern. Even so, Dees refused to lower his guard. He warned that danger could emerge at any moment and continued forward with measured steps prepared for hidden traps. When they reached the fourth floor, both stopped in disbelief. Before them stretched a lush forest, vibrant with greenery and arranged like a tranquil garden rather than a battlefield. Granada released a slow breath and confirmed the truth, identifying it as a curse, a spatial distortion created through advanced magic. Doubt crept into Hillen's thoughts as he questioned whether they were even inside the Demon King's tower anymore. Before any answer formed, he noticed a figure standing quietly ahead. His breath caught. A young woman stood there clad in demonic attire and radiating dark mana. Her appearance was delicate, almost fragile, yet profoundly unsettling. She identified herself as one of the 4 heavenly kings who served and guarded the Demon King, the Dark Spirit Master. Her demeanor was light and playful, as though the situation amused her. Helen had come to rescue a princess, yet she now stood before him as an enemy. Silence fell over the forest. Then realization struck him like a blade. Recognition widened his eyes as despair flickered across Granada's face. The young woman rejected the title of princess and asserted her identity as the Dark Spirit Master. With effortless ease, she summoned dark spirit magic. Helen's shock deepened as he recognized the spell, a pinnacle of spirit arts that only Princess Own could wield flawlessly. Everything connected at once. The nighttime ambushes, the hidden tower, the monocannons, the empty floors. None of it had been chaos. It had all been strategy, and Princess Own stood at its center. Disbelief curdled into bitterness as Dees let out a hollow laugh. Warmth drained from his expression as the truth settled in. The princess he had crossed hell to save had been protecting the Demon King all along. Rage surged violently within him. Before he could act, the space trembled. Dark, purple energy erupted across the garden, crushing the ground beneath their feet. The Demon King appeared, his presence warping the air itself as demonic power poured outward. His cold gaze locked onto Dees. The Demon King had finally revealed himself. Resentment ignited deep within Helen. Realizing how completely he had been cornered, he understood that power alone was no longer enough. He needed more. Turning sharply, he demanded Granada's strength. The ground trembled as the Demon King's gaze shifted. Helen stepped closer, insisting that they combine their power. Granada hesitated, confusion flashing across his face as he questioned how such a fusion could even be possible. Before any explanation came, his body stiffened. Vitality began draining from his blood. Panic surged as the sensation intensified, his strength bleeding away with every heartbeat. Helen's expression hardened into something cold and detached. He reassured Granada calmly that everything would be fine as long as he remained by his side. Granada collapsed. The Demon King recognized it instantly. The artifact Helen revealed exposed the truth. A forbidden relic known as the Elf Eater, capable of converting an elf's boundless vitality directly into mana. Once activated, survival was impossible. Helen pressed his foot against Granada's face, justifying the act as a necessary sacrifice for the greater good. The Demon King watched in silence. Then he smiled. The act was contemptible, disgraceful, and unmistakably human. He calmly noted that removing the ring would instantly erase all borrowed strength. Helen erupted into manic laughter, convinced that even the Demon King of Lust had failed to take that ring from him. The Demon King responded with a single name, Gordon. In the next instant, Deez's expression twisted in shock as searing pain tore through his body and blood sprayed into the air. He had sensed nothing, no presence, no mana fluctuation, no warning whatsoever. His hand went slack, strength draining away instantly. Standing behind him was Gordon, the Demon King's loyal servant. His blade was already lowered as though the strike had been nothing more than a trivial inconvenience. Before Deez could recover, Gordon struck again, sending him crashing violently across the ground. He lay there staring upward in disbelief. In that moment, Deez fully understood the threat before him. Gordon was a high-ranking demon. Even with the artifact's power coursing through him, Deez had been utterly overwhelmed. Then, pressure descended. The Demon King appeared behind him, gripping his shoulder with effortless strength. Crimson light burned within his eyes as a amused laugh escaped him. Escape was impossible. Dees attempted to move, but his body refused to respond. Only then did the truth become clear to him. Space itself had become a cage. Before him loomed a massive wolf-shaped presence, an ancient ruler whose authority had once dominated the entire continent. Understanding settled into Day is his eyes. There was nowhere left to flee. Dark energy gathered around the Demon King, swirling violently as the ground cracked beneath its weight. His voice carried a chilling calm as he declared that the moment had come to reveal what a true Demon King truly was. The rumbling intensified. Deez's eyes widened in pure shock as oppressive energy spread across the battlefield, whispering destruction into every corner of the world. After Deez landed a devastating strike, Helen remained sprawled on the ground, half dead, yet still alive. Even after defeating him, Deez acknowledged that Helen's power and strength were remarkable, as surviving such a brutal attack was no small feat. Deez then issued a cold order for Gordon to bind Hill's hands and throw him into prison. He further instructed that the other humans who had collapsed outside the door be locked up as well.